At 9:17 on the morning of January 22nd, 1943, Second Lieutenant Thomas Barrett crouched in the ruins of a Japanese bunker west of Point Cruz, Guadalcanal. Through his scope, he watched a banyan tree 240 yards away. The scope was a Lyman Alaskan, 2.5 power magnification. His fellow officers had laughed at it for 6 weeks. 27 years old. Illinois state shooting champion. 0 confirmed kills. The Japanese had 11 snipers operating in the Point Cruz groves. In the past 72 hours, those snipers had killed 14 Americans from the 132nd Infantry Regiment. Tom's commanding officer had called his rifle a toy. The other platoon leaders called it his mail-order sweetheart. In the next 4 days, Tom would kill 11 Japanese snipers with 12 shots. 1 miss, 11 kills, using a rifle he had saved 2 years of National Guard pay to buy. A rifle every officer said would not work in combat. A rifle that would prove civilian precision could beat military standardization. The Winchester Model 70 weighed 9 pounds. The scope added 12 ounces. The M1 Garand, issued to every other officer, weighed 9.5 pounds with no magnification. Tom's rifle was bolt action, 5 rounds. The Garand was semi-automatic. 8 rounds, rate of fire versus precision, volume versus accuracy. The Army believed in volume. Tom believed in accuracy. Within 2 weeks, he would train 40 men in techniques the Army had never taught. Create a sniper doctrine that would kill 74 enemy soldiers with 0 friendly casualties. Change how the American military thought about individual marksmanship. The Army would recognize his innovation, then forget his name. His rifle would sit in a museum where most visitors walk past without stopping. His book would remain in print for 70 years, read by specialists unknown to the public. Some stories die loud. This story would die the quietest of all. But this is not about recognition. This is about quality, about precision, about a promise made in a foxhole to a man named David Morrison. A promise that would drive Tom to stay in that bunker for as long as it took. A promise that would save 200 lives. 3 men would die before Tom understood the solution. A Japanese sergeant would hunt him using his own tactics. An Army major would try to suppress the innovation. And 60 years later, a son would discover his father's dog tags in the home of a man he had never met. To understand how a mail-order rifle changed warfare, we need to go back. To Springfield, Illinois. To a hardware store. To a young man who understood that quality compounds over time. That decisions made carefully last decades. That 2 years of savings spent on the right tool beats 10 years spent on convenient tools. If you or your father or grandfather served in World War II, you know what it meant when doctrine failed. When innovation emerged not from headquarters, but from desperate men. Many of you know what a Winchester Model 70 means. Know what it meant to save for something that mattered. To buy quality once instead of cheap twice. Share your stories in the comments about tools that lasted, about decisions that proved right. Hit that subscribe button because there is more to this story than the Army documented. Thomas Barrett grew up in Springfield, Illinois. His father owned a hardware store on 5th Street, sold tools and hunting equipment and ammunition. Tom learned to shoot at age 10 on his uncle's farm. Target shooting first, then groundhogs, then coyotes. By 15, he was entering competitions, county matches, state qualifiers, natural talent combined with discipline. Other shooters talked about instinct. Tom talked about mathematics, wind speed, air temperature, humidity, elevation angles, bullet drop calculated in inches per 100 yards. At competitions, other shooters arrived with expensive rifles and elaborate equipment. Tom showed up with borrowed rifles and factory ammunition and a notebook. He studied trajectories like other boys studied baseball, memorized ballistic tables, understood that precision was measurement applied consistently. In 1939, at age 23, Tom won the Illinois State Shooting Championship at 1,000 yards. Youngest winner in state history. 6-inch groups at 600 yards with iron sights. 5 rounds inside 4 inches at 300 with a borrowed scope. The prize was $250 and a trophy. Tom spent the money on a Winchester Model 70, bolt action, 30-06, the finest production sporting rifle made in America. He saved 6 more months for the Lyman Alaskan scope, another 3 months for the Griffin and Howe mount. Total cost $535. 2 years of National Guard pay. Other shooters thought he was insane. That much money on a hunting rifle when good rifles cost half as much. But Tom understood something they missed. Quality compounds over time. A perfect rifle maintained perfectly would outlast 3 cheap rifles, would shoot more accurately at 10 years than a cheap rifle at 1 year, would become more valuable, would carry your name, would teach your sons. The rifle sat in his gun safe for 2 years, came out for competitions and deer season. Maybe 200 rounds through it total. He learned its personality, how it shot cold versus warm, how it responded to different ammunition, how the trigger broke at exactly 3.5 pounds. He never thought it would go to war. Never imagined it would kill 11 men in 4 days. Never dreamed it would sit in a museum. Then Pearl Harbor happened. December 7th, 1941. Tom enlisted the next day. The recruiter saw his shooting records and sent him to officer candidate school. Graduated March 1942. Second Lieutenant, Infantry, assigned to the 132nd Infantry Regiment, forming at Camp Forest, Tennessee. Tom requested permission to bring his Winchester. The Army issued Garands to infantry officers, but Tom explained his credentials: state champion, expert marksman. A rifle capable of precision the Garand could not match. The armorer looked at the Winchester like it was a museum piece. Beautiful wood, polished metal, civilian scope. He asked if this was meant for deer or Germans. Tom said Japanese. Permission granted with conditions. The rifle had to ship through military channels. Could not be carried as luggage. Tom packed it in cosmoline in a wooden crate marked fragile. Sent it to the quartermaster. Expected it to follow wherever he deployed. The 132nd shipped out May 1942. Tom watched other officers clean Garands during the voyage. His Winchester sat in a Tennessee warehouse. He filed requests through military mail, tracked the shipping, waited. 6 weeks later, the regiment reached Guadalcanal. Late December 1942, relieving Marines who had fought since August. The Marines had taken Henderson Field, held it through months of desperate combat, but they had not taken Mount Austin, had not cleared the Japanese from coastal groves. A supply sergeant found Tom in late December, handed him a wooden crate marked fragile, been sitting in supply for 3 weeks. Nobody knew who it belonged to. Tom opened it. Inside was the Winchester, 6 weeks late, covered in cosmoline, but intact. Tom cleaned it that night, worked cosmoline from every crevice, checked the scope, loaded 5 rounds of 30-06 ball ammunition, military spec. Same cartridge the Garand fired. Tess fired it next morning. The rifle shot exactly where he aimed. 2 years in storage had changed nothing. Captain James Walsh saw Tom carrying the Winchester on patrol, asked what the hell that was. Tom explained, civilian hunting rifle, scoped, built for precision. Walsh looked at it like Tom was carrying a tennis racket to a gunfight. Leave the sporting rifle in your tent. Carry a real weapon. Tom carried it anyway. Walsh did not push. Officers had latitude with personal equipment. Long as Tom did his job, Walsh did not care what rifle he carried. Mount Austin stood 1,514 feet tall. The Japanese called it the Gifu. 500 men in 47 bunkers carved into volcanic rock. Interlocking fields of fire. Artillery pre-sighted on every approach. Tom's battalion attacked December 17th. Fought 16 days. Lost 34 killed and 279 wounded. Took the western slope January 2nd. By then, Tom had fired his Winchester exactly 0 times. Mount Austin was grenade range. The kind of fighting where you saw your enemy and he saw you. The jungle around Point Cruz was different. No bunkers, no fixed positions, just Japanese soldiers who had retreated west and melted into massive trees. Some were snipers, scoped Arisaka rifles. They knew the jungle, knew how to wait, knew how to kill Americans who thought they owned the battlefield. Private First Class David Morrison was from Peoria, Illinois, 24 years old, married to Helen, 2 sons back home. David Jr. was 8, James was 6. Morrison worked at Caterpillar before the war. Assembly line, building tractors. He enlisted after Pearl Harbor. Tom met Morrison the first week. They recognized each other's accents immediately. Illinois boys, different cities but same state, same winters, same flat vowels, same understanding that home meant something specific. They shared a foxhole during Mount Austin. Morrison could not sleep. The jungle made sounds that never stopped. Birds, insects, things moving through undergrowth. And underneath it, the possibility that every sound was death crawling closer. Morrison talked. Tom listened. Sometimes listening is the most important thing an officer can do. Morrison showed Tom photographs wrapped in oilcloth. Helen on their porch in Peoria. Dark hair pulled back. Tired smile. The smile of a woman managing 2 children in a household alone. David Jr. and James together. Arms around each other. Gap-toothed grins. Baseball gloves. Morrison talked about plans after the war. Get his job back at Caterpillar. Buy a bigger house. Teach the boys to hunt. To shoot. To understand that quality mattered more than price. He asked about the Winchester. Why spend 2 years of guard pay on one rifle when you could buy 3 rifles for that price? Tom explained. Quality, precision, a rifle that would last 50 years. That Morrison could pass to his sons. That David Jr. could use to teach his own sons. That would carry the family name forward. Morrison understood. He worked assembly lines. Knew the difference between products built to last and products built to sell. When I get home, I am buying a Winchester, teaching David Jr. to shoot, maybe competitions together. Father and son. Tom realized something during that conversation. Morrison was not just another soldier. Morrison was a good man, the kind of father who thought about what he would pass to his sons, who understood that examples mattered more than lectures. Before Morrison left for patrol, he said something Tom would remember forever. Save your money after the war, Lieutenant. Buy quality, it lasts forever. Tom never saw Morrison alive again. At 11:17 on the morning of January 19, 1943, Private First Class David Morrison was shot and killed while filling canteens at a creek west of Point Cruz. Tom was 100 yards away. Heard the shot. Single crack through jungle. Sharp. Precise. The sound of a rifle fired by someone professional. Tom ran. Dropped everything. Sprinted through undergrowth. Vines caught his boots. Branches whipped his face. Reached the creek in 30 seconds. Morrison was face down in shallow water. Blood spreading, dark red mixing with clear water, creating patterns that moved with the current. Tom rolled him over, applied pressure, but he could see immediately it was hopeless. The bullet had struck through the chest, punctured lung, maybe heart. The kind of wound that killed fast, that no medic could fix. Morrison's eyes were open, focused, aware. He tried to speak. Blood filled his mouth. He coughed, tried again. The words came as barely a whisper. Helen, the boys, Winchester. Tom held him, kept pressure even though he knew, even though he could feel Morrison's pulse weakening under his hands, could feel life leaving, could count seconds until the heart stopped. Morrison's hand gripped Tom's sleeve, tightened with desperate strength, then relaxed. The grip loosened. The pulse stopped. The eyes stayed open, but the focus left. The light went out. Tom sat there holding him, watching blood flow downstream, watching it disappear into the creek, into the river, into the ocean, carrying pieces of a good man away. He thought about Helen, about the telegram she would receive, about how David Jr. and James would learn their father was never coming home, about how Morrison would never teach them to shoot, never buy that Winchester. Never show them that quality mattered. Later that day, Tom helped process Morrison's effects. Standard procedure, log everything, send it home, close the file, move on. The war did not stop for grief. They found the photographs. Helen, the boys, Tom had seen them before, in the foxhole, when Morrison was alive and planning futures that would never happen. Found a half-written letter home, Morrison describing the jungle, the heat, the rain, the hope he would be home by summer. Found a small notebook. Inside, Morrison had written prices. Winchester model 70, $400. Lyman, Alaskan, $60. Griffin and Howe mount, $75. Total, $535. Notes about saving. 18 months if careful. Notes about teaching David Jr. About competitions. About legacy. The quartermaster logged everything. Said it would be sent to Helen Morrison in Peoria. Standard procedure. along with the telegram, the Purple Heart, the flag. Tom asked for the photographs. Against regulations, personal effects belonged to family, but the quartermaster looked away. Tom tucked the photographs in his pocket, next to his heart, a reminder of what he had lost, what Morrison had lost, what Helen and the boys would never have. Morrison died because a Japanese sniper owned the high ground. 14 Americans had died in 72 hours the same way, following doctrine that put them in open ground while enemies occupied elevation, following training that taught suppressive fire over precision. Tom could follow the same doctrine, watch more men die, or he could use the rifle everyone called a toy, use precision everyone mocked, keep a promise to a man who believed quality mattered. The choice was simple, proving it would be anything but. Over the next 2 days, more men died. January 20th, 2 soldiers from L Company during patrol, one shot through the neck from a tree they had walked past twice. The sniper had waited, let them pass, then killed the rear man. By the time the patrol reacted, the sniper was gone. January 21st, 3 more killed, different locations, different times, same method, single shots, center mass or head, professional shooting, the kind from training and experience and understanding terrain. By evening of January 21st, the 132nd had lost 14 men to sniper fire in 72 hours. The battalion commander summoned Tom, asked if that mail-order rifle could actually hit anything. Tom explained his credentials. State champion, 6-inch groups at 600 yards, 5 rounds inside 4 inches at 300. Precision the Garand could not match. The commander said Tom had until morning to prove it. One chance. Before Tom could prepare, Major Richard Coleman arrived, 52 years old. Ordnance Corps, career Army, West Point class of 1916. A man who had spent 30 years learning that systems work better than individuals. That standardization produced reliable results. Coleman had heard about the Winchester, about the mail-order sweetheart carried by an officer who thought he knew better than military experience. Coleman did not like individualists, did not trust innovation from below. Lieutenant Barrett, I understand you carry a personally owned rifle. Yes, sir, Winchester Model 70. The Army issues M1 Garands to infantry officers. There are reasons for standardization, interchangeable parts, common ammunition, logistical efficiency. My rifle fires 30-06, sir, same as the Garand. Your rifle is bolt action, 5 rounds. The Garand is semi-automatic, 8 rounds. In combat, rate of fire saves lives. Tom chose words carefully. In some combat, sir, but sniping requires precision over volume. 1 accurate shot at 400 yards beats 8 inaccurate shots at 200. Coleman's expression hardened. This is not a shooting competition, Lieutenant. This is war. Men die when officers prioritize sporting rifles over military equipment. Captain Walsh interrupted. Major Lieutenant Barrett has requested permission to engage Japanese snipers that have killed 14 men in 3 days. I am granting that permission. Coleman turned to Walsh. You are authorizing a lieutenant to operate independently with non-standard equipment against trained enemy snipers. I am authorizing Lieutenant Barrett to use the best tool available, sir. Coleman looked at Tom. One opportunity, Lieutenant. Tomorrow morning, if that sporting rifle works, document it. If it fails, you will turn it in and carry issued equipment. Clear. Yes, sir, and Lieutenant. When civilians play soldier with custom rifles, they usually die. I will not enjoy writing that letter to your family, but I will write it accurately. Tom had until dawn, 12 hours to prepare, to prove that 2 years of National Guard pay in a civilian scope could beat doctrine. Prove it or surrender the rifle. Prove it or watch more men die like Morrison. Tom spent the night checking his rifle. Field stripped it completely, cleaned every component, applied fresh oil, checked scope mounts, verified 0. Loaded 5 rounds of 30-06 ball ammunition. He thought about Morrison. About the promise he had not made in words, but felt like a stone in his chest. Morrison believed quality mattered, believed precision and patience were values worth passing to sons. Tom would prove Morrison right, or die trying. At 0300, he gave up on sleep, sat in his tent with the Winchester across his lap, thought about mathematics, wind, temperature, elevation, Everything prepared except the unknown. Where would the snipers be? How many? How professional? He would find out at dawn. At 05:30, Tom moved to the destroyed bunker overlooking Point Cruz Groves. Good cover, clear fields of fire. He settled in, positioned sandbags, checked the scope, then began to glass the trees, left to right, top to bottom, looking for movement, looking for shapes that did not belong, looking for the men who killed Morrison and 13 others. The jungle was never silent. Birds called from canopy. Insects hummed constant background noise. Wind moved through palm fronds with sound like rushing water. Tom filtered out the noise, focused on visual, on movement patterns, on things that did not fit. Through the Lyman Alaskan, he could see details invisible to naked eye. Individual leaves, bark texture, the way light filtered through canopy creating shadows and bright spots. The scope did not just magnify, it clarified, revealed. He glassed one banyan tree for 5 minutes. Nothing. Moved to the next. Nothing. The next. Still nothing. Patience, that was the skill, not shooting, waiting. The ability to remain still while time passed. To let boredom settle in without moving. To trust that eventually something would reveal itself. At 9:17, Tom saw movement, 87 feet up in a banyan tree 240 yards away. A branch shifted, no wind to explain it, just a small, deliberate movement. Tom watched. The branch moved again. Then he saw the shape. A man, dark clothing. Positioned in a fork where 3 branches met, the Japanese sniper was facing east, watching the trail where American forces moved supplies. His rifle was visible now that Tom knew where to look. Type 98 Arisaka, scoped. The sniper was professional, patient, waiting for targets the way Tom had been waiting to find him. Tom adjusted his scope. 2 clicks, right for win. The Winchester's trigger was glass smooth, 3.5 pounds. He had spent hours adjusting it before the war at his father's hardware store. Now he would discover if civilian target shooting translated to killing men trained to kill him first. Tom controlled his breathing. Military sniping doctrine taught breath control. Exhale halfway. Hold. Fire during the natural pause between heartbeats. Tom had learned this before the military taught it. Had learned it shooting groundhogs at 200 yards on his uncle's farm. Had learned it at state competitions. Had learned it by doing it 10,000 times until it was not a technique, but a reflex. He exhaled halfway. Held. Felt his heartbeat slow. Found the space between beats. The moment of perfect stillness. Squeezed the trigger. The Winchester kicked into his shoulder. The sound cracked through the jungle. Sharp report, then echo, then silence. 240 yards away, the Japanese sniper jerked, fell. His body tumbled through branches. 90 feet. Each impact on the way down made a distinct sound. Body hitting wood, wood cracking. Then the final thud when he hit the ground near the base of the banyan tree. Tom worked the bolt. The empty cartridge ejected. Brass catching sunlight as it spun through air. He chambered another round, kept his scope on the tree, waited for movement. Japanese snipers worked in pairs. 1 shooter, 1 spotter. Military doctrine again. Same principle whether you wore American uniform or Japanese. If Tom had just killed the shooter, the spotter was somewhere close, watching, trying to locate the shot, trying to survive. Tom scanned the surrounding banyans. The scope's 2.5 power magnification forced him to search slowly. Each tree could hide multiple men. The jungle canopy created shadows that made shapes impossible to distinguish without careful observation. At 9:43, he found the second sniper. Different tree, 60 yards north of the first, lower position, maybe 50 feet up. The Japanese soldier was moving down the trunk, retreating. He had heard the shot, knew his partner was dead, knew his position was compromised, was following doctrine. Relocate, survive, fight another day. Tom led the movement, aimed where the sniper would be in 2 seconds rather than where he was now. Fired. The second sniper fell backwards off the tree. His rifle clattered through branches ahead of him. Both bodies hit the jungle floor within seconds of each other. 2 shots. 2 kills. Tom reloaded from a stripper clip. 5 rounds. His hands were steady, his breathing controlled. This was no different than Camp Perry competitions, except the targets shot back, except men were dying, except Morrison was still dead and would stay dead no matter how many Japanese snipers Tom killed. But at least no more Americans would die today. At least Helen would not get another telegram. At least some other wife in Peoria or Springfield or Chicago would not learn her husband was never coming home. Tom settled back into position. Resumed glassing. The morning was young. Intelligence said 11 snipers. Tom had killed 2. 9 remained. And they would be more careful now. Would have heard the shots. Would know an American sniper was hunting them. Would adapt. Good. Tom wanted them careful. Wanted them afraid. Wanted them to understand that the high ground they owned could be taken. That precision beat volume. That quality mattered. That a mail-order rifle was not a toy. At 11:21, a Japanese bullet struck the sandbag 6 inches from Tom's head. The impact sprayed dirt into his face, stung his eyes, got in his mouth. Tom rolled left immediately, pressed himself against the bunker wall, did not think, just moved. Training taking over. The shot had come from southwest, different direction than the first 2 snipers. The Japanese were hunting him now, had located his position, were returning fire. This was no longer target practice. This was combat. Tom waited 3 minutes before moving. Basic counter-sniper doctrine. The shooter would be watching, waiting for movement, waiting to fire again, waiting to confirm the kill, take another shot. Tom counted seconds, controlled his breathing, ignored the dirt in his mouth, ignored the adrenaline. At 11:24, he inched back to his firing position. Moved slowly, no sudden movements, glassed the trees to southwest. The shooter would have moved after taking the shot. Standard practice. Shoot and relocate. Never fire twice from the same position. But in jungle, this dense relocation options were limited. Could not move too far without making noise, without revealing position. The shooter would be close to his original position. Different branch, different angle, but same general area. At 11:38, Tom found him. 3rd tree from left in a cluster of 5 banyans, 73 feet up. The Japanese sniper had repositioned to a different branch, but remained in the same tree. A mistake. Small mistake. But in sniping, small mistakes were fatal. Tom put the crosshairs on the dark shape partially concealed by leaves. Adjusted for wind, for distance, for the angle. Fired. The 3rd sniper fell without making a sound. Just dropped. Tumbled. Hit the ground. Tom worked the bolt. Chambered another round. Kept scanning. Kept looking. Kept hunting. By noon, Tom had killed 5 Japanese snipers. Word spread through the battalion. Men who had mocked his mail-order rifle now asked if they could watch him work. Asked if they could learn. Asked if he could teach them. Tom refused spectators. Spectators drew attention. Tension drew fire. This was not a demonstration, not a competition. This was hunting men who were hunting Americans. This was keeping a promise to Morrison. This required focus, solitude, patience. The Japanese adapted after the 5th kill. They stopped moving during daylight. Tom spent the afternoon glassing trees and seeing nothing. Professional snipers, learning fast, adjusting tactics, refusing to present targets. At 1600 hours, Tom returned to battalion headquarters. Captain Walsh was waiting. The mockery was gone from his voice. The skepticism erased. He wanted Tom back in position at dawn. Wanted him hunting. Wanted him killing. 5 snipers dead by noon. The mail-order rifle had proven itself. But Tom knew the next 6 would be harder. The easy kills were over. The Japanese would not make the same mistakes. Would not expose themselves. Would adapt. Evolve. Fight smarter. Tom cleaned his Winchester that evening. Field stripped it. Checked every component. The rifle had performed flawlessly. 5 shots, 5 kills. 0 malfunctions, 0 failures. Exactly as designed, exactly as built. Quality lasting under stress, under heat, under combat conditions. He thought about Morrison again, about quality mattering, about decisions made carefully lasting lifetimes. Morrison had been right. The Winchester had lasted, had performed, had proven that civilian precision could beat military standardization, that 2 years of savings spent wisely beat shortcuts, beat cheap alternatives. Morrison would never know, would never see his sons grow up, would never buy his own Winchester, would never teach David Jr. to shoot. But Tom could honor him, could prove he was right, could make sure no more fathers died while their sons waited at home. Tomorrow would bring more targets, more opportunities, more chances to keep the promise. Tom loaded 5 fresh rounds, set the Winchester beside his cot, closed his eyes, tried to sleep. In 12 hours, he would hunt again. January 23rd began with rain. Heavy tropical rain that turned the jungle floor to mud and made trees invisible beyond 100 yards. Tom sat in the bunker listening to water hammer on concrete, watching visibility collapse, waiting for weather to clear. The rain was loud, constant drumming, white noise that masked every other sound. Birds went silent. Insects stopped their humming. The jungle became nothing but water falling, water pooling, water running in streams down slopes toward the ocean. Tom thought about Morrison during the rain, about conversations in foxholes, about photographs of Helen and the boys, about plans that would never happen. He pulled Morrison's photograph from his pocket, protected in oilcloth now, the same oilcloth Morrison had used. Tom looked at David Jr.'s gap-toothed smile, at James with his arm around his brother, at Helen on the porch. Quality lasts forever. That was what Morrison had said. His last words before patrol. Save your money after the war. Buy quality. It lasts forever. Tom put the photograph away, checked his rifle again. The Winchester was dry, protected under the concrete overhang. Scope clear, shin clean, on rounds loaded, ready. The rain stopped at 08:15. Steam rose from the jungle floor as sun hit wet vegetation. The world went from gray to green in minutes. Visibility returned slowly. 50 yards, 100, 200. By 08:45, Tom could see the groves again, could see the trees, could resume hunting. At 09:12, Tom spotted the first sniper of the day. The Japanese soldier had climbed into position during the rain. Smart. The sound of rain had masked his movement. Nobody could hear boots on bark, hands gripping branches, equipment scraping wood. The rain had been cover, concealment, opportunity. This sniper had chosen a tree 290 yards out, longer range than yesterday, also smart. They were learning his capabilities, learning that 240 yards was within his effective range, that the mail order scope could see that far, could shoot that far. So they moved back, increased distance, made the shot harder. Tom compensated for distance, added elevation, adjusted windage. The rain had shifted wind patterns. Air was heavier now, more humidity. Bullets would drop differently. Tom calculated, adjusted, aimed, fired. The sniper fell. 6th kill. Tom worked the bolt, scanned for partners, saw nothing. The Japanese were adapting faster now, working alone instead of pairs, harder to find, easier to hide. But also no backup, no spotter, no one to confirm kills, no one to cover retreat. At 09:57, the world exploded. Japanese mortars began hitting the area around Tom's bunker. 3 rounds, then 3 more, then 3 more, walking fire, adjusting based on where rounds landed, getting closer each salvo. Tom understood immediately they had triangulated his position, either from muzzle flash or sound, had called in mortar support. We're going to kill him with indirect fire if they could not kill him with rifles. The first salvo landed 40 yards short, explosions throwing dirt and shrapnel. The second salvo landed 20 yards short. Closer, adjusting. The third salvo would hit the bunker directly. Tom had maybe 10 seconds. He grabbed his rifle, did not think, did not plan, just moved, sprinted north along the tree line, heard the whistle of incoming rounds, dove into a shell crater, hit hard, knocked the wind out. Then the world behind him disappeared in fire and smoke and noise. The bunker where he had been sitting moments before was gone. Just gone. Concrete pulverized. Sandbags shredded. Everything Tom had set up destroyed. If he had stayed 5 more seconds, he would be dead. Body parts scattered across Point Cruz. Another telegram. Another Purple Heart. Another name on a list. Tom lay in the crater breathing hard. Ears ringing, dust in his mouth. He checked the Winchester. Mud on the stock, but action looked clean. Scope intact. He wiped mud away. Checked the bore. Clear. The rifle had survived. Tom had survived. That was enough. He waited 5 minutes before moving. Let the Japanese think they had killed him. Let them believe the mortars had worked. Then he relocated, found a fallen tree 120 yards north of the destroyed bunker. Good cover, clear view of the groves, hidden from mortar observers. Tom settled into new position, resumed watch. The Japanese had tried to kill him, had failed. Now he would make them pay for trying. The afternoon brought more snipers. They knew Tom was hunting them. They were hunting him back. The dynamic had changed, no longer target practice, no longer one-sided. This was a duel. Professionals versus professional, training versus training, will versus will. At 14:23, Tom killed his 7th sniper. Japanese soldier positioned high, 94 feet up a banyan tree, excellent concealment among thick branches. But the height created problems. When sun angle changed, the sniper's position cast a shadow. Small shadow, barely visible. But Tom saw it, watched it, waited for the man to shift. When he did, Tom fired. 7th kill. At 17:41, Tom found his 8th target, another high position, 86 feet up. This sniper had chosen different concealment strategy, stayed motionless. No movement at all. Professional discipline, understanding that movement kills, that patience saves lives. But Tom had patience too, more patience. He glassed that area for 20 minutes, saw one slight movement, could have been wind. I saw it is. Could have been a branch settling, could have been nothing. Tom waited for another, 15 more minutes, then he saw it. Tiny shift, head turning, just slightly, just enough. Tom fired, 8th kill. By evening, Tom had killed 8 Japanese snipers over 2 days. 12 rounds fired, 8 hits, 4 misses. The misses bothered him. One had been wind, one had been the target moving at wrong moment. One had been miscalculation on angle. One had been his own error. Breathing wrong, pulling trigger instead of squeezing. Amateur mistake. Inexcusable. Tom reported to Captain Walsh at 1700 hours. Walsh wanted numbers. Tom provided them. 8 confirmed kills, 4 misses, 12 rounds total. Walsh wrote everything down. Official documentation, records, proof. Walsh assigned Tom to continue operations at dawn. Same mission, hunt snipers, kill them, make Point Cruz safe for American movement. Tom nodded, said nothing, went back to his tent. He cleaned the Winchester that night, completely. Field stripped, every part inspected, cleaned, oiled, reassembled. The rifle had performed perfectly. 0 malfunctions, 0 failures. Morrison had been right about quality. It lasted, it performed, it saved lives. Tom thought about the 3 remaining snipers. Intelligence said 11 total. Tom had killed 8, 3 left. Those 3 would be the best, the ones who had survived longest, who had learned from watching comrades die, who understood what Tom was doing, how he thought, how he operated. They knew his rifle now, knew its sound, knew its capabilities, knew he was hunting them from elevated positions, knew he used precision over volume. They would adapt, would plan, would try to kill him using what they had learned. Good. Tom wanted them smart, wanted them experienced, wanted to prove that American innovation beat Japanese professionalism, that a mail-order rifle from Illinois could beat trained soldiers from an empire, that Morrison's belief in quality was right. Tom loaded 5 fresh rounds, set the Winchester beside his cot, lay down, stared at tent ceiling. Sleep did not come easy. Too much adrenaline, too many images, too many sounds of bodies falling through branches. Too much awareness that tomorrow 3 men would try to kill him. 3 professionals. 3 who had survived when 8 others died. At 0300, Tom gave up on sleep, sat up, checked his rifle again. Not because it needed checking, because checking was something to do, because motion was better than lying still, because waiting for dawn was harder than hunting. He thought about home, about Springfield, about his father's hardware store, about the trophy on the mantle that his mother polished every week, about deer hunting in fall, about competitions where the only thing at stake was pride, about a world where shooting meant sport, where rifles were tools for game, where killing was abstract, distant, someone else's problem. That world was gone, replaced by this one, where killing was his job, where precision meant survival, where a rifle built for competition was now built for war, where every shot mattered because every shot saved American lives or failed to save them. Tom checked Morrison's photograph again, protected in oilcloth, edges worn now from handling, but faces still clear. Helen, David Jr., James, a family that would never be whole, a father who would never come home, a Winchester that would never be bought, lessons that would never be taught, unless Tom taught them, unless Tom proved Morrison right, unless quality mattered, unless precision won, unless the mail-order rifle finished what Morrison started. At 0530, Tom moved to his new position. Not the bunker, not the fallen tree. The Japanese would expect those locations. Tom chose a cluster of large rocks the Marines had used as a machine gun nest back in December. Good cover. Overlapping fields of fire, different angle, unexpected. He settled in, positioned his rifle, waited for light. The jungle was dark, absolutely dark. No moon, no stars, just blackness. Tom could hear the ocean, could smell salt air, could feel humidity on his skin, but could see nothing. Waited for dawn. Gray came first, not light, just less dark. Shapes emerging, trees becoming visible as silhouettes. Then details, branches, leaves. The world returning as sun rose somewhere beyond the horizon. Still not visible, just implied, promised, coming. At 0817, Tom found sniper number 9, Japanese soldier positioned in a palm tree 190 yards out. Low, only 40 feet up. Unusual. Most snipers climbed high for better sightlines, better visibility, better fields of fire. This one had chosen concealment over elevation. Smart, different. Tom aimed, put crosshairs on the dark shape partially hidden by palm fronds. Began to squeeze the trigger, then stopped. Something was wrong. The position was too obvious. Too easy. Tom had been hunting snipers for 3 days, had killed 8 men. The remaining 3 would not make elementary mistakes, would not position themselves where an elevated shooter could spot them easily. Unless it was intentional, unless it was bait. Tom lowered his rifle. Thought. The Japanese had learned he used elevated positions, learned he had good optics, learned he was patient, so they would use that against him. Would create a target he could not resist. Would position someone obvious, then wait for Tom to shoot. Wait for muzzle flash, wait for sound, then kill him. Tom scanned surrounding trees. If the sniper in the palm was bait, the real shooter would be positioned to cover him, watching for anyone who took the shot, waiting for target to reveal himself, ready to return fire. Tom glassed methodically. Every tree within 300 yards of the palm, looked for shapes, for shadows, for anything that did not belong. It took 11 minutes. Slow work, careful work, work that saved lives by not rushing. At 0828, he found the real threat. Banyan tree 80 yards northwest of the palm, 91 feet up, perfect hide, branches and vines concealing him from 3 sides. Only one angle of view, one narrow window, one way to see him, and he was positioned with clear line of sight to Tom's previous position at the fallen tree. The Japanese sniper was waiting for Tom to appear there, or to take a shot at the bait in the palm tree, waiting for sound, for movement, for any indication of where Tom was. Then he would shoot, would kill, would win. Tom had 2 problems. First, the real sniper was watching the wrong location. If Tom fired at him, the sound would reveal Tom's actual position at the rocks. The sniper would know immediately where Tom was, would relocate before Tom could work the bolt and chamber another round, would disappear, would survive, would hunt again. Second, if Tom did nothing, the sniper would eventually realize Tom was not at the fallen tree, would begin searching, would scan other positions, would find the rocks, would find Tom, would shoot first. Tom decided to use the bait against them, would take the shot they expected, but not from where they expected it, would create confusion, would force reaction, would use their plan against them. Tom aimed at the decoy sniper in the palm tree, adjusted for distance, for wind, fired. The decoy jerked, fell from the palm, tumbled 40 feet, hit the ground. Tom immediately swung his rifle toward the banyan tree 91 feet up, worked the bolt while moving, chambered around while tracking. Found the real sniper in his scope. The real sniper was turning, reacting to the shot, repositioning to face where the sound came from. The turn created movement, created opportunity, created a window measured in seconds. Tom fired before the sniper could complete his turn. The bullet caught him mid-rotation. The real sniper fell. His rifle tumbled after him, both bodies hitting the ground within seconds. Both dead within minutes. 2 shots, 2 kills, 9th and 10th snipers dead. Tom worked the bolt, chambered another round. But even as he did, he knew. He had revealed his position. Anyone watching would know where he was. The rocks, the Marine machine gun nest, the unexpected angle. Tom grabbed his rifle and ammunition. Did not wait, did not hesitate. Moved east along the rock line. Dropped into a drainage ditch 40 yards away. Pressed himself into mud. Made himself small, invisible, gone. At 08:34, Japanese machine gun fire raked the rocks where he had been positioned 6 seconds earlier. Bullets hitting stone, sparking, ricocheting, kicking up dust and fragments. The fire lasted 17 seconds. Sustained burst, disciplined, professional. If Tom had stayed, he would be dead, shredded. Another casualty, another telegram. Tom counted to 60 before moving. Let them think they had killed him. Let them believe the machine gun had worked. Then he relocated again. Shell crater 100 yards east, partially filled with rainwater. Not ideal, but hidden, unexpected, safe. He settled into the crater, water up to his chest, cold, muddy, smelling of rot and decay. Tom did not care. Hidden was better than comfortable. Alive was better than dry. He rested the Winchester on the crater rim, resumed glassing, resumed hunting. 10 confirmed kills, 1 remaining. The 11th sniper would be the best, the smartest, the most experienced. He had watched 10 comrades die over 3 days, had learned from their mistakes, had adapted, had survived. And somewhere in those trees he was planning, thinking, preparing. At 09:47, Tom realized his error. The 11th sniper was not in the trees, he was on the ground, and he was moving toward Tom's position. Tom saw the movement at edge of peripheral vision, 60 yards south, low to ground, a shape moving through undergrowth parallel to the tree line, using jungle floor vegetation for cover. Ferns, vines, fallen branches, crawling, stalking, hunting. The Japanese sniper had learned Tom expected snipers in trees, so he had come down, was using Tom's assumptions against him, was hunting the way Tom had been hunting. Ground level, patient, invisible. Tom remained motionless in the water. The Winchester was already shouldered. His breathing was controlled, but the angle was wrong. The crater rim blocked view of the approaching sniper. Tom would have to rise to get a clear shot. Rising would expose him. Create silhouette. Create target. The Japanese sniper stopped moving at 09:52. He had reached a position 40 yards from the rocks. Tom watched through his scope. The sniper was studying the rocks, searching for movement, for any sign of his target. Professional, careful, patient. Tom waited. Patience was the primary skill. Not shooting, waiting. The ability to remain still while time passed, while discomfort increased, while every instinct said move, act, do something. At 09:58, the Japanese sniper began moving again, crawling forward, 35 yards from rocks, 30 yards, 25. He was approaching from south side, the side Tom had used when evacuating under machine gun fire. Smart. Following the most likely escape route. Tracking. Hunting. At 10:03, the sniper reached the rocks, moved into the Marine machine gun nest, took up position facing him east toward the drainage ditch, toward where Tom should have relocated after the machine gun attack. Rifle aimed, waiting, ready. The sniper was now 38 yards from Tom's actual position in the water-filled crater. His back was exposed. Tom had a clear shot, center mass, 38 yards, easy shot even without a scope. But Tom hesitated. This sniper had survived 10 days of American operations at Point Cruz, had outlived 10 other snipers, men who had died because they made mistakes. This man would not make mistakes. The position was too exposed, too vulnerable. No experienced sniper would remain there for more than seconds. This had to be another bait, another trap. Tom kept his scope on the sniper in the rocks but expanded awareness to surrounding area. If this was bait, the real threat would be positioned to cover it, somewhere with line of sight to anyone who took the shot. At 10:06, Tom found it. A second Japanese soldier 70 yards northwest of the rocks, behind a fallen tree trunk. Not moving, not repositioning, just watching, waiting. Rifle aimed toward the drainage ditch where Tom should have been hiding. Two men, not one. The 11th sniper had brought support, or these were the final two snipers, numbers 10 and 11 working together. Either way, Tom could not shoot both before they reacted. The Winchester was bolt action, required working the action between shots. That gave them time to locate him, to return fire, to kill him. Tom needed a different approach. He slowly lowered himself deeper into water, submerged until only his eyes and top of head remained above surface, kept the Winchester pointed skyward to keep water out of barrel, then waited, invisible, patient, still. At 10:13, the sniper in the rock stood up. He had spent 10 minutes watching the drainage ditch, seen nothing, believed Tom had moved farther east. He turned and signaled to his partner. Hand signals, silent communication. Both men began moving east, parallel to each other, 70 yards apart, executing a sweep, planning to flush Tom out, to find his position, to kill him. Tom remained in the water, motionless. The two Japanese soldiers moved past his crater. They were now between Tom and the tree line, their backs exposed, their attention focused forward, searching for a target that was behind them. Tom rose from the water, slowly, silently, water streaming off his uniform, off his rifle, off his face. He brought the Winchester to shoulder, aimed at the closer soldier. The one who had been in the rocks, now 42 yards away, back turned, unaware, vulnerable. Tom fired. The soldier dropped. Tom worked the bolt, chambered another round, swung the rifle toward the second soldier behind the fallen tree. The man was turning, raising in his rifle, reacting to sound, training taking over. But Tom was faster, had already cycled his action, already aimed, already squeezed. Tom fired first. The second soldier fell. 11 shots fired over 3 days. 11 Japanese snipers dead. Tom had cleared Point Cruz Groves of the threat that killed Morrison and 13 others. But as he climbed from the crater, he heard voices. Japanese voices. Multiple men moving toward the fallen soldiers. Tom had killed the snipers, but the snipers had not been working alone. And Tom was standing in a water-filled crater with 2 rounds left in his rifle. Poor odds for a bolt-action rifle against multiple enemies. Tom dropped back into the crater. The water was cold, muddy. He submerged until only eyes remained above surface, held the Winchester vertically to keep barrel clear. Japanese voices grew louder. At least 6 men, maybe more, moving toward the bodies. Not snipers. Infantry, recovery teams sent to collect the dead. The voices stopped at the first body, 42 yards from Tom's crater, close enough to hear clearly even without understanding words. Then moved to second body. More conversation. Urgent tones. Then the voices moved again, not back toward tree line, toward Tom's crater. They had found his tracks, boot prints in mud leading from rocks to crater. Tom had been careful about noise, about movement, had not been careful about tracks. At 10:31, a Japanese soldier appeared at crater rim, looking down directly at Tom. Their eyes met. Recognition, understanding, decision. Tom fired from the water. The soldier fell backward. Tom worked the bolt while still submerged, chambered another round, rose up. Two more soldiers at crater rim. Tom fired, worked bolt, fired again. Both dropped. 3 rounds expended. 0 rounds remaining. Tom could hear shouting. More soldiers moving toward him. He climbed out of the crater on north side, away from approaching voices, ran 20 yards, dropped behind fallen tree. Japanese rifle fire cracked through jungle. Bullets struck ground around crater, around fallen tree. The soldiers were firing at movement, at sound, not at confirmed targets. Tom had no ammunition, no way to fight, no way to win. He needed to break contact, move back toward American lines, survive to hunt another day. He grabbed his Winchester, empty but still his, still Morrison's promise, still quality that mattered. He ran north, sprinted through jungle undergrowth. Vines caught boots, branches whipped face. Japanese rifle fire followed. Bullets snapping past, striking trees, kicking up dirt. Tom ran for 90 seconds before diving into another shell crater. Dry this time. He pressed himself against crater wall, listened. The Japanese voices were distant. They had not pursued, were regrouping around their dead. Tom checked his rifle. Mud on stock, water dripping from barrel, but action looked functional. Scope intact. The Winchester had survived. Tom had survived. That was enough. At 11:13, Tom reached American perimeter. Marine sentry challenged him. Tom identified himself. The sentry led him through. Tom walked to battalion headquarters, reported to Captain Walsh. Walsh wanted full debrief. Tom provided it. 11 Japanese snipers killed over 4 days. 12 rounds fired against snipers. 11 hits. Then firefight with infantry. 3 more kills. 5 rounds total. Walsh wrote everything down. Official record, documentation, proof that the mail-order rifle worked. Walsh asked about ammunition status. Tom said 0. Walsh asked about the rifle. Tom said functional but needed cleaning. Walsh told Tom to clean his rifle and rest. No operations tomorrow. Battalion moving east. Point Cruz no longer priority. Japanese evacuating Guadalcanal. Tom returned to his tent, cleaned the Winchester for 2 hours. Every component, every surface. Cosmoline and gun oil, patches through barrel until they came out clean. The rifle had done exactly what he built it to do. 11 snipers, 11 kills. The mail-order sweetheart had proven itself. Now the question was whether the Army would learn from it or forget it. At 1400 hours on January 24th, word came from division headquarters. Battalion commander wanted to see Tom. He walked to headquarters wondering if Major Coleman had filed charges. Unauthorized engagement. Excessive ammunition expenditure, operating without support, violations of doctrine. Instead, he found Captain Walsh and 2 other officers waiting. One was Colonel Richard Hayes, regimental commander. Hayes had one question. Could Tom train other men to do what he had done? Tom said he could try, but it would require time. Rifles with optics, men who could already shoot. Hayes said division had 14 Springfield rifles with unertl scopes. Sniper rifles left behind by Marines when they rotated out. Hayes had 40 men in the regiment who had qualified as expert marksmen before deployment. Men who understood rifles, who could shoot straight, who needed training and tactics. Hayes wanted Tom to create a sniper section, train the men, develop doctrine, clear remaining Japanese snipers from American operational areas. Make Point Cruz safe. Make the groves passable. Make it so American soldiers could move without dying to invisible shooters. Tom accepted, but he had one condition. He wanted to keep his Winchester. Hayes approved without hesitation. Tom kept his Winchester Model 70. The 14 Springfield rifles with unertl scopes would go to the men he trained. Major Coleman was present at the briefing. His expression was stone. After Hayes left, Coleman approached Tom, stood close, spoke quietly. You proved your rifle works, Lieutenant. Congratulations. But understand something. This was a unique situation. Specific terrain, specific enemy. Do not mistake success in one scenario for validation of individualistic approaches. Tom said nothing, waited. I will be watching your training program. Lieutenant, if it produces results, I will document it. If it fails, I will document that too. The Army learns from both success and failure. Make sure you provide the right lesson. Yes, sir. Coleman walked away. Tom watched him go, understood what had just happened. Coleman would not oppose the training directly, could not oppose it. Hayes had given orders, but Coleman would watch, would wait, would document any failure, would use failure to prove that standardization was right, that individualism was wrong, that the mail-order rifle was an anomaly, not a revolution. Tom had 4 weeks to prove otherwise. 4 weeks to turn 40 expert marksmen into snipers. 4 weeks to create doctrine from nothing. 4 weeks to show that Morrison's belief in quality could scale, could multiply, could save not just one life, but 200. Training began January 27th. Tom had 40 men assembled at a makeshift range 2 miles east of Henderson Field. The men were expert marksmen on paper, had qualified with iron sights at ranges up to 500 yards, could hit man-sized targets consistently, could handle rifles safely, could follow orders. But none had combat experience as snipers. None had killed from concealment. None understood the difference between target shooting and hunting men. None knew what it meant to wait 11 hours for a single shot, to watch a man through a scope for minutes before deciding to end his life, to live with the silence after the rifle cracked. Tom started with fundamentals: breathing control, trigger squeeze, reading wind. The Springfield rifles weighed 11 pounds with unertl scopes, heavier than the Garand, heavier than Tom's Winchester. The weight made the rifles stable but tiring to hold for extended periods. Tom taught them to use available support: rocks, logs, sandbags, anything solid. The jungle rarely offered perfect shooting positions. Snipers had to adapt, had to create stable platforms from whatever materials were available, had to understand that perfect was the enemy of good enough, that a shot taken from adequate position beat a shot not taken from perfect position. Range training lasted 3 days. Tom had them shoot at stationary targets from 100 to 400 yards, then moving targets, then targets partially concealed by vegetation, then targets that appeared for only seconds before disappearing, simulating real conditions, real combat, real decisions. By January 30th, 32 of the 40 men could consistently hit man-sized targets and at 300 yards under field conditions. The other 8 Tom reassigned. No shame in it. Not everyone was built for this work. Better to know now than to discover it when lives depended on performance. Tom divided the 32 into 16 two-man teams, shooter and spotter. The spotter carried binoculars and a Garand. His job was to locate targets and provide security while the shooter engaged. After each kill, the roles could switch. This kept both men proficient, prevented single point of failure, ensured that if one man went down, the other could continue the mission. One of Tom's best students was Corporal Michael Grant, 26 years old, from Montana, grew up hunting elk and deer in mountains, understood patience, understood cold, understood that hunting was 90% waiting and 10% shooting. Grant had questions Tom appreciated, not about equipment, about ethics, about what it meant to kill men from concealment, men who could not see you, could not fight back, could not surrender. Tom gave him honest answer. It meant accepting asymmetry, accepting that war was not fair, that if you gave the enemy a fair chance, he would kill your friends. Morrison had died because a Japanese sniper did not give fair chances. Tom was teaching men to prevent more Morrisons, more telegrams, more widows, more sons without fathers. Grant understood, said he would remember that, would remember why precision mattered, would remember that every kill prevented American deaths, that mathematics was simple even if morality was complex. On February 1st, Tom took 4 teams into the field. Mission was to clear Japanese positions west of the Mataniko River. Intelligence indicated small groups of Japanese soldiers still operating in the area. Not snipers, just infantry, stragglers who had not yet evacuated, men covering the retreat, men buying time with their lives. The 4 teams moved into position at dawn. Tom paired with Corporal Grant as his spotter. They set up on high ground overlooking a trail the Japanese had been using for resupply. Good visibility, clear fields of fire. 300 yards of coverage. At 07:20, a Japanese soldier appeared on the trail. Grant confirmed the target through binoculars. Soldier, not civilian, armed, legitimate target. Tom fired. The soldier dropped. Tom worked the bolt. Scanned for additional targets. None appeared. The trail went silent. Over the next 6 hours, Tom's team engaged 7 more Japanese soldiers on that trail. 7 shots, 6 kills. 1 missed due to wind shift he had not anticipated. Grant called corrections. Tom adjusted. Next shot hit. The other 3 teams reported similar results. 23 Japanese soldiers killed that day. 0 American casualties. The sniper section had proven the concept, had shown that trained men with good equipment could dominate terrain, could make movement deadly, could save American lives by taking enemy lives first. The sniper section continued operations through early February. By February 9th, the section had killed 74 Japanese soldiers. Conservative count. Only confirmed kills where bodies could be observed. The real number was probably higher. Men wounded who died later, men who fell in places nobody could see, men who simply disappeared. The Japanese evacuation accelerated during this period. Destroyers arrived at night to pick up troops from Cape Esperance on the western tip of Guadalcanal. American forces pushed west to interdict the evacuation. The Japanese fought effective rearguard actions, traded space for time, sacrificed men to save units. Professional. Disciplined. Effective. Tom's sniper section was tasked with eliminating Japanese soldiers covering the retreat routes, made it harder for them to delay, harder for them to fight, harder for them to survive. The section operated for 12 days total, 74 confirmed kills, 0 friendly casualties during sniper operations. On February 7th, Tom was operating near the Tanamaboa River when a Japanese rifleman shot him. The bullet struck his left shoulder. Impact spun him around, knocked him down. Pain was immediate, sharp, burning, electric. Grant dragged Tom to cover, called for a corpsman. The wound was serious but not fatal. Bullet had passed through muscle without hitting bone or major blood vessels. Clean through and through, would heal, would scar, would remind him forever of Guadalcanal. Tom was evacuated to the field hospital near Henderson Field. Doctors cleaned the wound, sutured it closed, told him he would recover but needed rest. No combat operations for at least 3 weeks. Minimum. Possibly longer depending on healing. Tom spent 2 weeks at the field hospital. Watched the war continue without him. Watched men come in wounded. Watched some die. Watched others recover and return to their units. The war did not pause, did not wait, just ground forward, consuming men, converting them to casualties. Statistics, numbers in reports. During those 2 weeks, the Japanese completed their evacuation of Guadalcanal. On February 9th, American forces reached Cape Esperance and found it empty. The campaign was over. Months of fighting, thousands dead, an island secured, a foothold established. The beginning of the long push north toward Japan. Tom's sniper section had operated 12 days. 74 confirmed kills. 0 friendly casualties. The section was officially recognized by division headquarters. Colonel Hayes recommended Tom for a Bronze Star, submitted the paperwork, documented the results, made it official. Major Coleman filed his own report. Tom saw a copy later. The report documented the sniper section's effectiveness, acknowledged results, praised individual performance, but included caveats. Success attributable to specific terrain, specific enemy tactics, specific personnel. Unclear if results could be replicated in other theaters, with different personnel, against different enemies. Recommended further study before incorporating sniper tactics into standard doctrine. Emphasized need for controlled evaluation rather than rushed adoption based on limited sample size. The report was thorough, professional, designed to slow institutional change, to maintain standardization, to protect doctrine from innovation. While Tom recovered, new orders came from Pacific Command. The Army needed experienced combat officers for a classified mission. Something in Burma, something involving jungle warfare and long-range patrols and operations behind enemy lines. Volunteers only. No guarantees. High risk, high reward. Tom volunteered. By March, he was on a transport ship heading west across the Pacific. His Winchester Model 70 was packed in a waterproof case in the cargo hold. Lyman Alaskan scope wrapped in oilcloth. Protected, ready, waiting. The unit had no official designation initially. The men called themselves Merrill's Marauders after their commander, Brigadier General Frank Merrill. The formal designation came later. 307th Composite Unit. Provisional. Temporary. Expendable. The mission was long-range penetration behind Japanese lines, modeled after British Chindit operations in Burma, small mobile forces operating deep in enemy territory for extended periods. No supply lines, no reinforcements, no extraction if things went wrong. Just men and rifles and whatever they could carry. Tom was assigned to 2nd Battalion, not officially listed as a sniper. The Army still had no formal sniper positions in its table of organization. Tom was designated as a rifle platoon leader, standard assignment, standard role. But battalion command knew what he could do with a rifle, knew his record, knew his capabilities. The Marauders entered Burma in February 1944. The mission was to advance through northern Burma and capture the Myitkyina airfield. The airfield was critical for Allied supply routes into China. Japanese forces controlled it with approximately 4,000 troops. The Marauders would approach overland through terrain the Japanese considered impassable. Mountains, rivers, dense jungle, no roads, limited trails, 700 miles on foot through some of the worst terrain on Earth. Tom used his Winchester 7 times during the 3-month campaign. Once at 412 yards against a Japanese officer directing troops at a river crossing. Once at 380 yards against a machine gun position. Once at 290 yards against a sniper who had pinned down a Marauder patrol. 7 shots, 7 kills. But most combat was close range, 50 yards or less. Firefights in dense vegetation where you could barely see 30 feet. Where semi-automatic fire mattered more than precision. Where volume beat accuracy. Where the Garand was better than the Winchester. Tom realized something during those 3 months in Burma. The Winchester Model 70 was an excellent rifle, perhaps the best bolt-action sporting rifle ever made. But modern warfare was changing. Semi-automatic rifles like the Garand were becoming standard. The M1 carbine, the M2, future weapons would be even faster, even more automated. The next war would require different weapons, different tactics. The individual marksman with a custom rifle was being replaced by standardized forces with interchangeable equipment, mass production, mass deployment, industrial warfare. The mail-order rifle had proven a concept, but the concept was already obsolete. Tom returned to the United States in July 1944. The Army promoted him to captain, assigned him to Fort Benning, Georgia. His job was training infantry officers in marksmanship and small unit tactics, teaching the lessons learned on Guadalcanal and in Burma, how to move through jungle terrain, how to identify and engage targets at distance, how to operate independently. He kept his Winchester Model 70. The rifle sat in a footlocker in his quarters at Fort Benning. Tom rarely looked at it. The war had changed. The Pacific Islands were being retaken. American forces were advancing through France and into Germany. The need for individual marksmen with privately owned rifles was fading. The military was standardizing. Mass production, interchangeable parts, soldiers with identical equipment and identical training. Tom understood the necessity. Modern warfare required industrial scale, but something was being lost. Individual skill. The craftsman approach. The idea that one man with the right rifle could change outcomes. Tom was discharged in January 1947. Lieutenant Colonel, 2 Bronze Stars, 1 Purple Heart, Combat Infantry Badge. He returned to Illinois, enrolled at Princeton University on the GI Bill, studied politics, graduated with highest honors in 1950. After Princeton, he went to Oxford, then spent 4 years in British East Africa studying regional politics and institutions. Eventually settled in Washington, D.C., Executive Director of the Institute of African American Relations. Later joined the State Department's Foreign Affairs Institute as a consultant and lecturer on African affairs. Built a career, built a life, left the war behind. In 1947, Tom decided to write down what had happened, not for publication, just for his own record. Documentation of weapons and tactics while details were still fresh. While he could still remember the smell of cosmoline, the sound of the Winchester cracking, the weight of Morrison's photograph in his pocket, he wrote for 6 months. The manuscript grew to over 400 pages. Technical, detailed, clinical descriptions of rifles and ammunition and ballistics, of what worked and what did not work, of lessons learned the hard way. A friend at the National Rifle Association read the manuscript, suggested publication. Tom was reluctant. The book was technical, not the kind of content that interested general readers. But the NRA convinced him, said there was an audience, said people wanted to know, said the knowledge mattered. The book was published in 1947 under the title Shots Fired in Anger. It became a classic among firearms enthusiasts and military historians. Not a bestseller, not famous, but respected, used, referenced. The kind of book that stayed in print because specialists needed it, because it told truths others did not tell. Tom lived to see the United States fight 3 more wars: Korea, Vietnam, the Gulf War. Watch the evolution of military rifles from Garand to M14 to M16. Watch sniping become a formal military specialty with dedicated training and equipment. Watch the lessons of World War II being relearned and refined by new generations. He never spoke publicly about Guadalcanal during those years. Had colleagues who knew he had served in the Pacific, but they did not know about Point Cruz, did not know about the Japanese snipers, did not know about the Winchester Model 70, did not know about Morrison, about the promise, about quality mattering. In December 2008, David Morrison Jr. was 73 years old, retired machinist, living in Peoria, Illinois, same house where he grew up. His father had died January 19, 1943. David Jr. was 8 years old when the telegram arrived. He remembered his mother Helen receiving it, remembered her crying, remembered his younger brother James asking when Daddy was coming home, remembered Helen saying Daddy was never coming home, that he had died serving his country, that he had been brave, that they should be proud. David Jr. grew up without a father, but he grew up with stories. Helen had told them about David Sr., about how he wanted to teach his sons to shoot, about quality and patience, about Winchester rifles, about saving money for things that mattered, about legacy. In December 2008, David Jr. visited Washington, D.C. His daughter lived there. During the visit, he went to the National Firearms Museum in Fairfax, Virginia, walked through exhibits looking at history, at weapons, at the tools men used to fight wars. He saw a Winchester Model 70 in a display case. The placard read Winchester Model 70 Lyman Alaskan Scope, used by 2nd Lieutenant Thomas Barrett, Guadalcanal, 1943. 11 confirmed kills against Japanese snipers. Point Cruz Groves, January 22 through 24, 1943. David Jr. stood there reading, processing. His father had died January 19. 3 days before this, lieutenant started hunting snipers. His father was one of the 14 Americans mentioned in the placard, killed by Japanese snipers that Barrett had eliminated. David Jr. contacted the museum, asked if they had contact information for Thomas Barrett. The museum said Barrett was still alive, 92 years old, living in Virginia. Would the museum facilitate an introduction? The museum called Tom, explained the situation. Tom said yes immediately. They met at Tom's home December 15, 2008. Tom answered the door. Old man, thin, white hair, but steady hands, sharp eyes. The kind of eyes that had looked through scopes, that had made decisions, that had lived with consequences. David Jr. introduced himself, son of David Morrison, killed January 19, 43, Guadalcanal. Tom's expression changed. Something passed across his face, recognition, memory, pain. He invited David Jr. inside. They talked for 3 hours. Tom told the story about meeting Morrison, about foxhole conversations, about Morrison's plans to buy a Winchester, to teach his sons, about Morrison's death at the creek, about finding photographs, about keeping them for 65 years against regulations, about the promise. Tom went to his bedroom, returned with a small box. Inside were Morrison's photographs. Helen on the porch, David Jr. and James with baseball gloves. The same photographs Morrison had shown Tom in the foxhole, preserved in oilcloth, protected, carried through war and peace, through decades, through life and something else. Dog tags, David Morrison, serial number, blood type, metal worn smooth from handling, from being carried, from mattering. Tom handed them to David Jr. Your father's. I kept them, against regulations. But I needed to remember why precision mattered, why 11 snipers had to die, why the mail-order rifle could not fail. David Jr. held the dog tags, felt their weight, felt connection to a father he barely remembered, to a man who died when David Jr. was 8, who became a memory, a photograph, a telegram, stories his mother told, but never a presence, never there. You avenged him. Tom shook his head. I honored him. There is a difference. Revenge is personal. Honor is professional. Your father believed quality mattered, that decisions made carefully shaped lives decades forward. I tried to prove he was right. David Jr. looked at the old man across the table, 92 years old, still sharp, still carrying photographs from 65 years ago, still remembering, still honoring. Thank you for remembering him, for keeping his things, for making sure he mattered. We all mattered. Your father, the other 13. The 40 men I trained, the 74 enemy soldiers we killed. Everyone mattered. That is what warfare is, mattering against other mattering until one side stops. Before David Jr. left, Tom mentioned he was not feeling well. Doctors had given him weeks, maybe months, heart, kidneys, lungs, the body wearing out. 92 years was enough, more than enough. He had no complaints. But he was glad they had met, glad Morrison's son knew the story, glad someone would remember that the mail-order rifle was not just about innovation. It was about honoring men who believed quality mattered. David Jr. promised to place the dog tags with the Winchester at the museum after Tom passed. Create a memorial. Let people know what the rifle meant, why it mattered, who it honored. Tom died January 3, 2009, 3 weeks after meeting David Jr., 92 years old. Quiet death, no drama, just systems failing, body stopping, life ending, the way most people die. Without spectacle, without witnesses, just gone. The Winchester Model 70 sits in a display case at the National Firearms Museum in Fairfax, Virginia. Next to it are David Morrison's dog tags on a small stand. The updated placard reads, Winchester Model 70, used by Lieutenant Colonel Thomas Barrett, Guadalcanal, 1943. 11 Japanese snipers killed in 4 days. Trained 40 men. Created sniper doctrine credited with 74 enemy casualties and 0 friendly losses. This rifle honored Private First Class David Morrison and 13 other Americans killed by Japanese snipers, Point Cruz, January 1943. Most visitors walk past without stopping. It looks like any other vintage hunting rifle. Polished wood, metal worn smooth from handling. A scope that seems primitive by modern standards. Nothing special, nothing remarkable, but it is not just a rifle. It is proof that a state champion marksman with a mail-order scope could outshoot professionally trained military snipers. That civilian precision could beat military standardization. That quality compounds over time. That decisions made carefully last decades. That 2 years of savings spent on the right tool beats 10 years spent on convenient tools. It is the rifle that cleared Point Cruz Groves in 4 days when an entire battalion could not do it in 2 weeks. That changed how the American military thought about individual marksmanship. That proved Morrison right about quality. That kept a promise made in a foxhole to a man who died believing his sons would learn to shoot Winchesters. The rifle that one man built with 2 years of National Guard pay. The rifle everyone called a toy. The rifle that mattered. Tom Barrett's book, Shots Fired in Anger, remains in print today. Still sold, still read, still referenced by collectors and historians. Not famous, not best-selling, but useful, trusted. The kind of book that lasts because it tells truths, because it documents what happened, because it honors what mattered. If you are still watching, you understand what made the greatest generation special. Not just following orders, knowing when to break them, when innovation mattered more than protocol, when saving lives required thinking differently. Many of you served. Many of your fathers did. You know these moments, when the old ways failed and new ways emerged, when necessity forced adaptation, when one man with one rifle proved that quality beats quantity, that precision beats volume, that careful decisions last generations. Share your stories in the comments about the innovations you saw, the men who thought differently, the changes that saved lives. Hit that like button if this story resonates. Hit subscribe. Turn on notifications. We are rescuing forgotten stories every day. Stories about riflemen who prove themselves. Real people, real heroism. Drop a comment right now. Tell us where you are watching from. Tell us if someone in your family served. Just let us know you are here. You are not just a viewer. You are part of keeping these memories alive. These men deserve to be remembered. You are helping make that happen. Thank you for watching. Thank you for remembering. Thank you for understanding that the greatest heroes are often the ones whose names we never learn, whose rifles sit in museums, whose books gather dust, whose promises were kept in silence. Tom Barrett spent his life proving that quality mattered, that precision saved lives, that civilian innovation could beat military doctrine. He carried that gift to war, used it to save 200 lives, brought it home to a quiet existence where nobody knew what he had done. That is how innovation happens. Not through committees, not through official channels, through desperate men who watch friends die, who cannot follow doctrine that does not work, who risk everything to try something different, through men who understand that sometimes the only way forward is to think back, to remember what worked, to apply old knowledge to new problems. The Winchester Model 70 that killed 11 snipers in 4 days sits behind glass now, protected, preserved, displayed. Most people walk past without stopping, without knowing, without understanding what it meant, what it saved. But you know now, you watch this story, you learned about Morrison, about Tom, about the promise, about quality lasting, about precision mattering, about the mail-order rifle that proved skeptics wrong. And somewhere right now, a 90-year-old man in Tulsa is alive because a German officer died before he could call artillery on an American position. Wait, wrong story, wrong war. Somewhere right now, a 90-year-old man in Peoria is alive because Tom Barrett kept a promise to his father. Because quality mattered, because precision saved lives. Because a mail-order rifle was not a toy. That man does not know Tom's name, does not know about Point Cruz, does not know about the Winchester. Just knows his father died in the war. Just knows his mother raised 2 boys alone. Just knows he grew up without a father, but with stories about quality, about patience, about legacy. That is the only legacy Tom Barrett ever wanted. Not his name in history books, not his rifle in museums, not recognition, just men going home, just families staying whole, just the quiet knowledge that understanding quality and having courage to prove it saved 200 people from becoming names on telegrams. Some heroes die loud. Tom Barrett died the quietest of all. And 200 families never knew they should say thank you. The end.